tell me, where am I wrong? Morally, where am I wrong?
I think if you're among the first people in history in the world to stop doing something that is very common, I think you should get some credit for that, especially if it costs you. And I think you should also get credit for spending a century and a half suppressing it from Brazil to New Zealand at cost. Can you make up for what happened to those people then? No, you can't. Can we make up for what happened to the many serfs who were exploited or the early industrial workers who were? No, we can't.
Hold on. We did lose people, as you say. You did mention the cost. Several hundred, some say more than 1,000 British sailors were involved in sacrificing their lives, and that is undeniably true. 3 million slaves were taken by the British Empire across the Atlantic. 300,000 or more died just crossing over the Atlantic. Whatever we did to cancel it out, clearly was insignificant because you're looking at the price. And when we say we talk about, we can't do anything about they're already dead. Finally, we managed to find £20 million at the time, which was equivalent to 40% of the government budget, to compensate the slave owners. We compensated the slave owners, but not the slaves or the victims of slavery. The reason for that is morally wrong. Morally.
It wasn't morally wrong. That was required to get abolition to the British Parliament. That has not been...
That's why we're really concerned with peer speaking. That's not a moral assessment. Well, the moral is actually irrelevant.
No. If you want to get slavery abolished, that was the political cost. And if you didn't pay that cost, then slavery gets extended. I think that was a justifiable, and that was a justifiable political compromise. The other reason for paying compensation to the owners of slaves was to enable slave sugar plantations to remain viable businesses after slavery. Why? Yes, of course, so that investors could continue to make profit, but also so that emancipated slaves would have some means of earning a wage.
But why can't people today in the Caribbean, CARICOM, as you know, the Caribbean states, they're asking for, you know, their number one request in their 10-point list of reparations? Cost of nothing. How can't we do that?
So if you think a public overview is more important than the actual process of abolition and the process of worldwide suppression, I think it's more important that I guess we can take it away.
We're saying that that's not important. We're saying that's not enough.
What I'm saying that I think the act was a costly policy. To do all the work that I'm sure we don't know.
But it happens to British government to get a family close to blocking the use of doing it further. We've still got private who are waiting here to come in. Neither says it's just not possible. It wasn't possible then. It's not possible now. This isn't an issue of morality or opinion. It's about getting slavery ended. We paid the price for slavery. What's wrong with that?
I think that we always try to follow the idea of reparations and slavery and possibility when in fact we see it pretty permeated within the international and transnational jurisdictions of the colonial not just the German reparations paid towards victims of the Holocaust, we can look at the German paying reparations to the victims of the genocide in modern-day Namibia, and we understand the mechanisms that could allow for that ability to transfer resources over time to people who've been victims. If we could do that with the compensation of the enslavers with the Slave Compensation Act in 1837, which comes after the Emancipation Act in 1834, then we absolutely have the technology to be able to do that in the current day.
Lawrence Gordon, do you disagree with that?
3 points. 1. In 1832-33, a Whig cabinet had to push for emancipation. And the slaveholders in the Caribbean set the price at 40 million. 40 million was what they wanted. And the Whigs beat them down to 20 million. Now, it was not controversial. If you look at political records, if you look at correspondence, nobody thought it was controversial at all. That was the price that had to be paid, and the British were prepared. Their government was prepared. It's a deal. Well, it's an agreement. Okay. Simply again, people are because sometimes you just have to do things with a painful, but not in a moral framework. Secondly, think about apologies for a moment. And let me be a moralist. What would be the validity of an apology by people who have nothing nothing to do with slaves, who lived generations after again, who lived in a multicultural society where tens of millions of us were not even here. What are we apologizing for? Something that we never did. Why would we apologizing to people who were never slaves? It would be empty. It would have no significance. It would destroy the idea of an apology.
Very common and strong argument. I'm going to this point here and say, Cody, do you want to respond to that?
I think that when we talk about worldview and values, acknowledging the violence of transatlantic slavery and also trying to make a path of justice, we start thinking about what happens in the present, not just in the past. I think that there's a moment of a changing world in which we have growing multipolarity. Britain is looking to try and re-establish its relationship with its former colonial countries in the Commonwealth. Of course, that problem has never been turned out that the foreign office has coordinated that trade strategy, Empire 2.0. This is part of the myopia that happens when we try to extend ourselves into the current changing world without acknowledging the violence and the pain of people that try to
Let me bring in Jaminda Bamra, who's been waiting patiently. Let me make the point that empire is part of you. We talked about this earlier. The Islamic slavery and Californian slavery. What's the response to that? What would you say?
I mean, well, I think there's a real issue about justice to what is being talked about. It is just not true that all societies had forms of slavery that were equivalent in a way. What emerges within Western trade in human beings is a very distinct form of slavery which involves the transaction of human beings. So you have forms of servitude and you have forms of coerced labour in societies where there weren't the ideas of free labour. What's distinct about the emergence of chattel slavery, as the Europeans undertake it, is that what's happening in Europe at the time is the emergence of the idea of free labour. They have free labour at home, but to kidnap and enslave population elsewhere and to transact them, and that's a very distinct form from any other type of serfdom, servitude, or forms of bondage that exist in any other part of the world.
So I feel accept that there were different forms of slavery. I need to ponder what you said to quite understand the significance of it. What I don't accept is that the form of enslavement that the Europeans engaged in was uniquely brutal. It was very brutal, it wasn't uniquely so. In terms of reparations, to think of the British alone, and it's only the British or Europeans that we think of, is just unfair. Given the fact that we abolished it, we suppressed it, we paid for that, and that no one is asking money from Africa. And West Africans were involved in enslaving other Africans, at least from the 1500s. I mean, it's very good.
The abolition of slavery was followed by a century or more of indenture. So it's not as if abolition was the end of the story. So we often talk about abolition as if it's the end of the story of European involvement and the enslavement of population. Not only do we not talk about enslavement within the Indian Ocean world, but only focus on transatlantic slavery, but we also don't then look at the systems of indenture that took millions of Indians and Chinese. So we have the indenture is not just a mistake.
Morality, indenture, and slavery are not the same thing. Just on slavery, before I do want to go to the audience, you could have written a book and said, I think that we did a great job on slavery, which we did. But I don't know if this is just to help people kind of set that up. You've got this line, the tyranny of imaginary guilt. As Christian theologians, you're saying we shouldn't feel guilty at all about 3 million Africans being taken out of their homes and moved to Africa. That's the guilt is imaginary? Why can't we have guilt? I also believe everything you just said. First of all, we really feel guilt for something we did. We did. We did everything that we did. You and I didn't. No, you and I didn't. I'd be immense for someone else to do it. I can't feel guilty. So you're telling me with a straight face, you don't take pride in brilliance and us defeating the Nazis in World War II. I'm never taking pride in it. try to do it. I admire the fact that
I take pride in it. It's not us.
of course, I can't claim the credit having done that better than
That's right.
only in the record. So there's guilt in the record. There's a guilt because you can't be guilty of something you didn't do.